Good morning and good afternoon. It's great to have you with us. Thanks for making some time to join us for our first user group for 2024. So the US and the Americas go first this month. We've shifted things around as for those who maybe have attended regularly. So we're now looking to host the Americas edition or the Americas episode on the first Thursday of the month. So you can pop that in your diaries. You'll receive an invitation anyway as a subscribed member. But we'll have that running at least for the next few months. That as things shift in relation to summertime and so on and so forth, we'll jazz things up a bit, but we'll keep you up to date. We'll keep you on your toes. All right, so welcome to today's session. My name is Derek. I'm your host today, and we'll be facilitating the session. And I'm joined by Sean Camilla, who's going to be helping with Q&A and messaging. So thanks, Sean, for joining us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Just some very quick housekeeping. We use Zoom for those who have attended regularly. We are recording this session. Replays will be available soon after. As an attendee and a subscriber, you will always receive information in relation to replays and links to our blog post where there is more information, which will be developed over the next couple of days as we finish off the Asia Pac episode next week as well. One of the key changes we've made this year is we're reducing the time format of these sessions to 45 minutes, which will be 45 minutes plus Q&A. So the objective there is if time is tight, you just want to get through the topic, obviously you're welcome to join us to do that. But if it gets to 45 minutes and you need to run, I want you to feel really comfortable about logging off and leaving, not feeling like you're abandoning us in any sense. But if you do have questions and you want to hang around or you want to listen to those questions, we'll remain on the line for at least another 10 or so minutes to take any of those questions. That'll help us reduce the format to 45 minutes and make it a bit easier for everybody, hopefully. So here's our agenda for today. So we'll quickly go over some questions that have been submitted prior to today's session, and one literally just came in a few hours ago. So I've tried to put a bit of a response together on that one, which I think shouldn't be too hard. We'll also then look at a strategic approach to newsletters and thinking about that in the context of our newsletters and using the email design editor to help us through that process. The importance of your audience, it's critical that we can focus so much on the content, etc., but we need to go back a step and really understand who we're talking to and what that audience looks like and who they are, maybe where they are, and maybe what they're interested in. And so that might help facilitate a bit of audience building and audience development, which can obviously then impact the content of your newsletters as well. So we'll then dive into the email design editor and we'll do a quick update for release 24A. And then, as I said, we shift into Q&A. So that's what we're up to today. So first question was from Samantha. She's an e-marketing specialist in the US. She says, when will Eloqua have exact button tracking? So when this question first came in, I was like, you can, but I think I understand the dilemma. When I spoke with our specialists upstairs, and I always say upstairs because they are literally upstairs, I think what Samantha is asking for is she might have the same link. There are a couple of reports available in Insight, and I've got a screenshot of those right here in front of you. And you may well have used some of these. So the email click-through link breakdown is a really good one. What it doesn't do, though, is if you have the same URL behind a couple of different buttons, then it rolls those together as a single line item, I think is the issue that Samantha is talking about. And what she would like to see, I think, if I understand correctly the question, is you'd potentially like to see specific reporting based on each button that is in the particular email, Sam. Yes, that's what. Thank you, Sam. Yes, that's what I'm asking. Okay, cool. So in speaking with our team of geniuses, our developers, etc., upstairs, they've confirmed that we have built reports like this. It can be done. It's just not a native out-of-the-box report. We've got some other clients over the years who asked for the same level of detail in relation to performance. So what I can do is leave maybe Sean, who's on the line there. Maybe Sean, we can make a commitment to follow up with Sam and at least get a bit of an idea and a bit more detail exactly what she's after, confirming it is, of course, emails, not just or landing pages, or maybe it's both, for instance. and we can have a look at that in a bit more detail. Thank you, Sam, for confirming. Much appreciated. Okay, and this was the question that just came in this morning, my time. So, is there a method to verify Eloqua tracking scripts are working properly on your website? All right, so let's have a look. One of the easiest ways to identify is this graph right here on your screen. So, when you first log into Eloqua, because you asked the question, working properly. So the word properly threw me a little bit, only that it kind of works. It's either working or it's not working. It's one of the two, right? So it either is or it isn't. So this graph that you've got here, I've seen this happen before with clients. They've gone through the process of refreshing their website, and then all of a sudden this graph is just flatlined. So it might be perfect up until a particular date when you can hover and get those dates. But it just then flatlines. And so what that what that indicates typically is that in the move to the new website, the Eloqua tracking script has not been included in that process. So that's certainly an alarm bell in relation to not working properly. Now, Nipan, you may have been the other part of your question, I was wondering, may have related to maybe multiple websites. Just looking at your organization and the size of your organization, it could be that there are multiple websites in use. Now, as long as you own the domain, your Eloqua tracking code can be put on any of those, just as you would your Google tracking code. So same sort of thing. Absolutely no difference. Just that you have to own the website. So if you own the website, then you can put your Eloqua tracking script on there. So hopefully that answers your question. All right. Now the next question is kind of a little bit of fun. I hope it's a little bit of fun from Peter. Now Peter is from Poland, and with the time shifting that we've done in relation to the user group, this month and over the next couple of months, unfortunately, we're not live in Europe during the business day. And so Peter asked the question, why don't you care about your European customers? And I can assure you, Peter, we certainly care about them. We certainly have replays available, and we will be back during the European Business Day. It's just that during the summer down here in our part of the world, it gets very difficult to have a sensible time here and still get on the mark for the Americas and for continental Europe. But we love Poland and we love Europe. And as I said here, our CEO is English, which makes him almost European. So, but we will return to a more suitable time. But thank you so much for your interest and your support. We do appreciate it. So we will be back. But of course, there's always replays. All right, let's get on to it because we've got quite a bit to get through. So newsletters are just a staple, right? They're part of pretty much everything that we do as marketers. All of us will have one, two, or more newsletters that we put out on a regular basis, and some are maybe running weekly, some monthly, maybe some quarterly. There's all sorts of cadence that you may have with those, but an underlying strategy is certainly a critical part of that process. Now, the good people at Litmus do some wonderful research and get the opportunity to talk to thousands of marketers, and they come up with some interesting insights. And so this one I found particularly interesting. So 41% of marketers say that email is their most effective marketing channel. What I found quite interesting, though, in this was that the runners-up was certainly social media, but that comes in at 16% and paid search at 16%. So email is effective. We know it's effective. That's why we're here. That's why we're doing it, I suppose. But just to reinforce that point. And so what we want to do is make it obviously as effective as possible. So is there a little bit of newsletter stress in your part of the world? I literally sat with a client just the other week and pretty much went through this discussion with them. Oh my gosh, we've got a week to go. Okay, what on earth are we talking about? Will content be ready, etc. Who are we emailing? That in their world, that was a little bit of a challenge because of the way people within the business nominate who should be getting the newsletter, which I'm not sure that's necessarily the most effective or the best approach to doing things, but artwork, etc., deadlines, and so there's a little bit of stress involved. So a good strategy can certainly help you underpin a far more relaxed approach, hopefully. There's still going to be pressure, of course, because deadlines have to be met, and with deadlines come pressure. But here's some questions for you to kind of think through, right? So sometimes a newsletter can morph from being a real newsletter through just simply being something that's a sales brochure masquerading as a newsletter. If your newsletter is full of links that say buy now, buy now, buy now, buy now, I think you need to revisit what it really is. Let it be what it is. That's fine if that's working for you, but it's not a newsletter, really. Okay. What's the objective? Are you looking to lift brand awareness? Usually that's a good one. Sitting with a client the other day, they've been working on a real multi-channel strategy with their email newsletters coming from Eloqua, mixing with a LinkedIn subscriber base using the LinkedIn newsletter construct there as well. So just tapping into a slightly different audience, which is more about branding than anything else. They're also doing podcasts. They're sort of 40 episodes deep in their podcast world. So they're kind of doing really well there from that point of view. And then there's the odd webinar, etc., that they throw in as well. So all of those things are generally brand awareness and helping convey the expertise that they have as a brand based on the services that they sell. What is your number one goal? Maybe it is lead generation. How frequently can people expect to receive your newsletter? The frequency and cadence is important, and it can be a challenge for smaller marketing teams. Maybe it can be a challenge for larger ones too. But that client I just mentioned, there's two of them. And so they do all of that between the two of them. So yeah, they're quite remarkable with what they're getting done. And then also something else to ponder in relation to your newsletter is where does it maybe fit in your customer journey or their buying program, or if we're looking at prospects, do prospects get this newsletter? Is it kind of anyone can get the newsletter, or does the audience differ slightly based on the content? So all sorts of things to think about as you're building out your newsletter. So there are different approaches that you can take in relation to newsletters and the format and the content that might underpin that type of strategy. So if it's a newsletter that's a true newsletter in that there really is information in there that is somewhat newsworthy to your subscriber base, then content can be designed to position you as a thought leader. So it might be research that you've done. It might be research you're involved in. It could just be your thinking. It could be blogging from the CEO. It could be from influential individuals within your own organization who are respected within the industry. You could offer insight on very specific topics. You could provide critical reviews on topics. Deliver that on a set schedule. So that's one approach to a newsletter. Summary newsletters can also work. So these are often more of a high level. So maybe the newsletter goes, maybe it's once every 2 weeks, maybe once a month, whatever it might be. Let it go out on its regular schedule. And then you can use a summary newsletter where maybe it's only delivered once a quarter, but it provides a summary of the last 3 months and focuses just on the high level content that performed really well. It could also be mixed a little bit with the one that you want people to be reading. Obviously, we can control that a little bit, which is good. But it can be something that's a little bit dumbed down in relation to content. So it's either two types of newsletters, really, right? It's the newsletter that you receive in your inbox that people read from their inbox, or it's a newsletter that is very short and sharp with links to click away to read full access of articles. Now, news organizations, your CNNs and your BBCs and those sorts of organizations are really good at the short snippet with a link to click away because they want you to go to their website. And if you're a paid subscriber for their services, obviously you're going to have to log in order to see that in more detail. So two different methods, two different ways of presenting. Now, the summary newsletter, actually someone that does this really well is McKinsey & Co. So McKinsey & Co, with their thought leadership and information they share, they even I think it's called quarterly update. It's completely transparent from that point of view. I'm pretty sure it's just called quarterly update. But that's exactly what they do. And they just roll up a summary essentially for you. And you can subscribe just to that. If you go through their process and look at their preference center, you can subscribe just to that if you want. So there's benefit to different approaches and giving people flexibility to pick and choose on what they want to do. Now, it is a key or an opportunity, as I said at the bottom, to really focus on either a single topic or actually an upcoming event. So depending on the time and the regularity as to when that one goes out, maybe you use that as a vehicle to do a little bit of advertising for something else. So cross channel, moving people from an email maybe to having them come to a webinar of some sort, or an in-person event. And then, of course, you may do bespoke newsletters that there's just something happening within your world, within your organization, that would genuinely be of benefit and is of newsworthy stature. And so maybe that's a one-off that could go out to your subscribers and potentially to others as well. All right, now what I want to do is just quickly throw a poll up on the screen, and I'm going to leave that up on the screen while I progress forward, giving you the chance to answer that one. That's all right, so you should see that on your screen. So I'll leave that for you to have a look at while we progress on to our next topic. So what does your audience look like? I mean, audience development is really critical and a key part of the process. And Eloqua does make that pretty easy for you. So let's have a look in a little bit more detail. So the key thing I wanted to get across here is the diversity of your potential audience that you're talking to. Different cultures, different ethnicities, obviously different genders. There's a whole range of mixture of humanity potentially dropping into your subscriber base. Now, how you choose to identify people, typically, well, I think the smartest way to do it is based on their express preferences. So if you have a vehicle that enables you to not just simply capture first name, last name, email, and company name, but also being able to give them an opportunity to share with you what they're actually interested in, because then all of these other differences potentially go away. They're kind of not irrelevant, but they potentially go away because you can focus just on what that person has actually expressed to you that they're interested in. And you would do that through a preference center of some sort, of subscription and preference center. So the tailoring of your messages is super critical. And obviously within Eloqua, you've got things like dynamic content, you've got field merges that you can play with, and all of those things tied together. Now, if you're also storing data on custom objects, these again can also influence your dynamic content as well to surface more relevant content potentially. So a newsletter is not necessarily a static thing that just has 5 articles in it and that's it, and everybody sees exactly the same thing. You could use some dynamic content to start to mix things up a little bit based on whether or not the person is in fact a customer, or if they're a prospective customer, or maybe they're a business partner. So maybe the introduction to the newsletter could change a little bit based on those things. The purpose of the preference and subscription center, if we look at the example I just gave there with McKinsey & Co., so that enables you to present or enables your subscriber to really kind of get into detail and tell you what they're interested in. Their job category can be interesting, understanding a bit more about their role, all those sorts of things. Those variables can then be used by you as you build out your newsletter and your content plan. I find one of the critical things from my point of view is when I'm building out a newsletter, or even if it's an event, for example, is playing with my segment and looking at it and then actually drilling into the data and looking at the humans line by line that make up that segment, because I often start with the segment and then we'll then move to, okay, now I'm going to use some dynamic content because I notice in my segment this month, there's a really large proportion of people from the education and training industry, or there's a large portion of people from financial services. Okay, there's enough people there that I think I'm going to use some dynamic content to kind of tailor that message a little bit so they see a slightly different message to others. And because the nature of your segments, they change, obviously, on a fairly regular basis, they're very rarely static. It's always a good idea just to dive in and have a closer look. Now, the notion of the preference center is really good because it enables you to manage that whole opt-in process, but also capture attribution. So if you're wanting to direct people to the preference center, you can use some query strings and other fun things to make sure you know where people are coming from. So from an attribution point of view, that can be quite helpful. Then it could also include communication preferences beyond email, right? So we often get stuck in thinking Eloqua email. Okay, that's great. But if you have a preference center, thinking about it from your client's point of view or your prospect's point of view, they need one place to come to where they can tell you, okay, I'm happy to receive email, happy to get SMS. I don't want any snail mail. That isn't using the post to get things in my mailbox. Telephone, etc., all those things. You could use the preference center to capture all of those preferences, not just email. Keeps it in one nice place, which is good. All right. So the key thing, though, with any subscription to your newsletter is making sure it's easy for people to tell you what they want to hear about. So at Marketing Cube, we do this in a range of ways from our website. Little shameless plug here for our website. So under About Marketing Cube, we have a subscribe today that will take you directly to our preference center. And then the other one I wanted to talk to you about is sometimes more subscription specific. So that first link will take you to our preference center, which offers you the world. So it's every subscription that we offer. You can pick and choose, tell us about your preferences, etc. Now, across our website, we have other pages that talk very specifically to individual types of subscriptions. In this case, this is our event page. And so with the event page, I have a link there and a button highlighted, subscribe now and don't miss the next event. So that will take people not to the preference center, but just to a very separate subscription. It still updates the same information in the back end as far as Eloqua is concerned. It still subscribes them to our events subscription. But I figure if people are here on this page, they're looking just at events, let's just make it nice and easy and simple for them to subscribe to events. And that can be the starting point. At least we're getting the opt-in, we're getting them into the database. They've obviously expressed an interest, they want to know more, and so we can sort of take it from there. So the autoresponder email that people get from this particular subscription would include a link to take them to the main preference center. What do I say there? It's something to the effect of, well, thank you for subscribing to events. We offer a range of subscriptions. Click here to discover those. And so they can click on that and then they'll be taken to the preference center. What's the expression? You want to kind of strike while the iron's hot, right? So while they're engaged and interested, that may be the best chance to go ahead and do it. So just a different approach. Not one approach is always the best one. So multiple approaches to kind of get to the same goal is not a bad thing. Okay, audience building. So you can build your audience in a number of ways. And over the years, I've seen multiple ways people like to build audiences. So there's the random approach, which is usually the chaos theory applied to list building, which is, it's not the best one. Okay, so it's not ideal. Based on profile data. Now, if you can think about your newsletter and then proactively look at your list of people within your database and start to apply some filters based on profile, you might look at industry. We want this one, that one, that one, and that one. We want job titles to include keywords like this, this, and this. We want them to be using our product or services of this one, this one, this one, and this one. There might be some custom object data. That's great, but it's all profile. So it's certainly better than kind of this, pray and spray approach of the not ideal approach. So we're getting better. The next one that would be even, well, I'd say much better, as I've said here, the much better approach is to take all that magical profile data that you've got and then blend it potentially with some engagement. So it's going to be another way to start building your audience as you go through. Now, of course, the nirvana state or the sweet state is where people actually subscribe to your newsletters. Now, they're not going to know about it just because they're sitting there feeling good about things. We need to proactively entice people to subscribe to our newsletters. And so that's where we need to use the website potentially as one place to do that, or we need to do some cross-marketing. So as we're talking in different campaigns in relation to things, you want to come up with some calls to action Think of them as maybe little ads, advertisements that you would put in various emails that incentivize people to actually proactively subscribe to what you're doing. So there's a whole range of ways to do that. But the nice thing about that last one is if people actually subscribe, is you can then use the email group construct within Eloqua to support that process and have people subscribed or unsubscribed at the email group level versus them just simply opting in and opting out. Opting out means globally unsubscribed, right? So we want to try and avoid that one where possible. So I just wanted to quickly jump in and show you what I mean by that as we look in Eloqua. From segments, so each quarter we put out a newsletter for the important updates for Eloqua, so release information. And so that process starts off here in my template chooser. You can see we have quite a few segment templates in place there. So what I do is type in the word important. There it is. Important update subscribers. Spelt incorrectly. I'm like, why does that not look right? Because it's spelt incorrectly. Yep, good. Okay. So then we dive in. Let me zoom in for you so you can maybe see that a little easier. So what are we doing here? So the key thing is the email group construct, right? So using email groups as the primary method of confirming that a person is subscribed. Having random ticks on, check boxes on contacts or, is Mary in today? Because I need the subscriber list off her C drive that's in Excel. Those sort of lists are a bit dangerous from all sorts of things, all sorts of reasons. So the email group construct is built purposely to do this for you. It also enables you to manage at the email group level unsubscribe. So if people no longer want to receive the newsletter, they can tell you, I don't want to get that newsletter versus saying, don't ever email me again and opting out. So it's a much nicer, more elegant way to manage your newsletter subscriptions. And so what I'm doing here is because it is an Eloqua update and we have clients using other platforms, I need to obviously make sure that it's definitely Eloqua that they're subscribed to. Then I've got my usual suspects for unsubscribes, exclusions, anyone that might be a competitor. That's really sweet that they subscribe, but we'll let them find their own insight, right? And then something that we make pretty clear in most of our communications is, if you're a Gmail, Outlook.com, Google.com, whatever you might be, we're trying to have a business relationship with you. So thank you for sharing your real work email address with us. Right, so that's where that comes to. That's the subscription process. You'll find those all over here, obviously. So if you just type in the word group, you've got an option here called subscribe to groups. Okay. And so you'll be able to play around with that and adjust it. You may have noticed there's different parameters. 9 times out of 10, I find it's always as of now. It's very rare that I would choose those other ones, but you do have great flexibility, obviously, with various operators to help you through that process. So that's where that starts off. And then I might break that down to, is it just customers that are subscribed? Is it business partners who are subscribed? And the only reason I would break down the segments, so I have multiple segments on my canvas, is more so for reporting. Because obviously I could have a single segment and have them all sitting in one segment. But by having 3 separate segments on my campaign canvas, you'll find the reporting is better as well. So when you start to look at the email dashboards, you then get individual breakdown of this audience and their engagement with your newsletter, the second audience and their engagement with your newsletter. So that could be quite helpful in that process as well. Okay, so designing content. So what we wanted to do here was provide you with, I'm not going to help you in the next 15 minutes with your content strategy, but give you some ideas to kind of support that process, I suppose. But I want to show you some things in Eloqua as well. Okay, so thank you, Sam. I'm just looking quickly at Q&A, guys. Wait a sec. You're welcome, Sam. And Nipan, do you also exclude soft bounces? Nipan, so going back to that segment, you're obviously having a quick look there at some of those filters. I generally don't exclude soft bounces. Why don't I do that? So soft bounces typically would imply like that's an out of office or something like that. And in my world, if someone's out of the office, it's usually just for a couple of days, right? It's not like they're gone for 3 months, etc. Unless it's a maternity leave, where usually we know that, so we actually update our system and we don't send them emails for a period of time, and we set a reminder note for ourselves. In our industry, we have a lot of female clients who happen to fall pregnant and do go on maternity leave. And so what we don't want to do is ram their inbox while they're gone. We don't want that to happen. So soft bounces typically are a shorter time frame, and there's very little at Marketing Cube that we do from a campaign point of view that we're shooting emails out potentially to the same person on a Monday, a Tuesday, maybe miss Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So it's more likely that it'd be at least a week in between before we repeat. So it may have been a soft bounce back the first time, but it probably won't be the second time. So the decision as to why we don't do that, Nippon, is probably more specific to us, our cadence of delivering emails, and kind of our audience. So there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't exclude soft bounces. If you'd like to do that, that's fine. But yeah, just have a bit of an understanding, I suppose, as to why you're doing it. But yeah, hopefully that helps. All right, next point. So what we're doing here is trying to think about content in the context of your strategy. So I need you to think about your strategy and what you're trying to do. The first one is to identify that high-performing content. And over the past X period, it could be 6 months, 12 months, you might want to go 18 months or 2 years. It's really up to you. The longer you do it, sometimes can be quite helpful, but the older it goes, obviously, the less relevant maybe some of the content is. If it's 2 years old, it could be less relevant than content today. Recycling content. So recycle content in summary format in your newsletter. So that goes back a little bit to the previous comment. Once we understand the high-performing content, if it's still relevant today and of interest and didn't contain really time-specific information, could it be recycled? Could we use it in a summary newsletter of some sort? Now, the other thing I would encourage you to look at is using content blocks. So maybe you get some content through your evaluation that maybe you designate as marquee content. You know, it's the creme de la creme of your content library, and it's consistently high performing stuff. People will always sort of click on this for whatever reason. That's your marquee content. So maybe using content blocks to make it super easy for your team to be able to grab that and drop it into either a newsletter or potentially into other communications to be a bit of a cross-channel, not cross-channel, but cross-campaign type of approach to drive a bit more traffic can be a good idea. This one's a bit of a tease, but we have one client who struggles with the provision of content within their business. I'm trying very hard not to describe them or their industry. And they manage a lot of egos within the business in relation to the content development process. And so what they decided to do was arrive at a leaderboard. So they published very publicly within the business a leaderboard based on highest engagement to lowest engagement. The inference being that the highest engagement was obviously the far more interesting content versus the most boring content. Yeah, they were just getting a little bit sick and tired of some of the egos and the massive articles that would be given to them to provide people. So they had no problem with the supply of content. It was just sometimes the size of that content. So a leaderboard was kind of fun. It stirred up a bit of interest within the organization. All right, so layout examples. So I want to jump from here pretty quickly into the email design editor and I want to use for you the example of the important update email that we send out on a quarterly basis. So this will be somewhat familiar to you, and there'll be all sorts of theories. I mean, I looked at a whole range of different sources to really see who thinks of best practice. But of course, every single software company that sends email thinks they know how to do it the best. That's great. Look, there's not a lot of difference between them, by the way. When you lay things out in an email, it's a medium, and there are only certain ways of doing it. The difference is employing, I suppose, brilliant design people who kind of know this stuff in a bit more detail. So that's why I've chosen a chunky layout option. But let's have a look inside Eloqua, because I think that's the easiest thing, and I think that's part of what you're here today, obviously, to look at. So I think here was one I prepared earlier. Yes, there is. So my day or my email building process would start typically like this. Definitely using templates. So if you're going to old content and saving as last month's newsletter, I just can't discourage you more. It just is not a good approach. It's dangerous. You've got to remove all of the hyperlinks manually. Chances are you will forget one or you will miss one. It's just problematic. So have a think about that, okay, in relation to is that really the best approach to what you're doing? So in the purpose of a newsletter, because the newsletter is generally relatively consistent in its approach, what I've done we've done a refresh just recently in the last couple of months for the important update one. So what we've done is we've created 3 different banners, and we're just going to kind of rotate through those 3 different banners over the different editions of this particular subscription. So the idea here is that once you're in here, you just kind of delete the ones that you don't want, and then you're off and running. And so you'll see it's there's lorem ipsum everywhere. Some things, for instance, this is actually dynamic content, the greeting. And so what we've done there is based on the country that people have told us they're from, we just slightly amend the greeting. We're not sending the whole email in different languages. We're a little bit too small, and English is our first language, etc. But we just thought it was a nice thing to at least be able to greet people potentially in their native tongue. So, but of course, you always run the risk of an Australian living in Germany, and so that's okay. I'll just say Guten Morgen, and hopefully that person will know what that means. But key things I found that have been really helpful is putting summaries at the very beginning of newsletters to provide some insight as to what's going on. And then essentially, as you move through the process, you'll notice that everything sort of sits within a block or a content area within the email. And then there's some placeholders for other things already being built in, but then it just kind of repeats. I think there's 3 built in. And then it's kind of all ready to rock and roll. This particular newsletter requires some dynamic content based on pod numbers and those sorts of things. So that comes in later. We found doing some research in Insight that this particular newsletter got shared a lot. We could see that the forwarding was quite high. And so we thought, let's see if we can get some of those people to subscribe. And so that does work. And so this is all just consistently sitting there. It's already set up in the template to go off to a subscription page specifically for that one topic. Okay. Now, if I show you one more, so here's the actual edition. This one's actually hot off the press and goes out today, tomorrow for the 2 audience. So this is that template I showed you, but actually now looking like a newsletter. And so you can see we've added the list of all the different topics that will be happening, Insight upgrades, which is fun, Redwood rollout, Zoom users can get excited. If you're using the Eloqua Facebook Leads app, by the way, you need to re-authenticate, and that needed to happen by the 30th of January. So it's now passed. It's not going to work essentially if you've not done it. So you need to go back in and re-authenticate if you're using the Facebook Lead Ads app a lot. So details there, engage updates, and a little bit more. So this is a very information-filled newsletter, and you can see by the design of the newsletter, that's that dynamic content that I mentioned. So once we know which pod people are on, then we can give them specific information about when their updates are taking place. That's all. But yeah, so this particular newsletter is really largely to deliver the content within the email itself. We do provide from time to time, you'll see the links to look at other areas, and you can read more if you want to, but our objective is to try, where possible, to give you as much information as we can within the email itself. And maybe you're reading it on the way to work, maybe you're on the train or the bus or however it is you get to work, not while you're driving, hopefully. And that's just one approach. So different ways of doing things. The content block piece that I talked to you about is over here. So we've got these various sections, right? And chances are you'll fill them up. Now you can always click on duplicate. That's obviously, you can add those in. But what I've done is I've also put over here, if I type in the word important being my keyword for these assets, well, then I can drag that in as well. So now I've got multiple sitting in there, but they all blend and match. So just a great use of blocks, nice and simple, consistent, brings it in every time. It's nice and easy. This one here pretty much only gets used in this particular email, but I have developed in the past others for incentivizing. So doing that, maybe it's a user group email going out, and in the user group email, a confirmation email probably, I may invite people to subscribe to important updates, something like that. And I can use some dynamic content to only present to people who are not subscribed, things like that. So there's a few options to play with. Okay, let's go back into Eloqua. Now, the only part that I've not really been able to get to there today is the reporting piece, but let me quickly wrap up on this one for you. So the key thing about trying to identify that high-performing campaigns the content is to start at the campaign level typically. If you can find your high-performing campaigns in Insight, which isn't it's not a difficult process, you just got to work out what the metric is that you believe makes it high-performing, obviously. The other question I would have for you, because sometimes you've got lots of campaigns, do you have campaign fields set up? So when you launch a campaign in Eloqua, you go to options, campaign fields, then you get this pop up on your screen with the 3 fields: product, region, and campaign type. If you have those configured, and you'll notice the little asterisk next to those as well, it means they're required. If they're required, that's brilliant. That obviously helps you with far more granular campaign reporting. So instead of competing with webinar invites versus newsletters going out versus reports going to shareholders, etc., and staff communications, all very different types of campaigns. Hopefully you have those set up. If you don't have those set up, please reach out to us. They're pretty simple to get configured, and they can make a world of difference to the quality of your reporting as well, and especially when you're doing this sort of research. Okay, so once you've got that done, identify the highest performing assets, whether it's email, landing pages, kind of whatever it is, and then really start to think about how that content could potentially be recycled. If it's not time sensitive with dates and those sorts of things, it could be a really good candidate to be recycled. And consider various ways to recycle the content. From that point of view, I mean, not just the email, but maybe it's also a little bit about the social channels. It could be other types of newsletters, thinking across the business and the organization. So hopefully a range of ways for that to happen. But use that same insight to also drive a little bit of your content development moving forward. So when you're doing some brainstorming around your content strategy, don't sit there in isolation. Go back into Eloqua and have a look at, over the last 12 months, what is it that people have been clicking on, which is surely a great indicator of the level of interest that people have got on certain topics. And then you could even go further and drill down and have a look at the people that potentially make up all that clicking behavior as well, which can be a little bit more telling, depending on the size of your organization and how well you may actually know some of those customers as well. All right. So we're out of time. We're at a little bit over the 45 minutes. In relation to the what's new, we kind of covered that a little bit. That newsletter I showed you, that's a live newsletter. That is the update. So maybe the better thing to do is, if you want to scan that QR code that's on your screen right now, if you scan that one, that will subscribe you. And even though that campaign has launched, but yeah, it's actually scheduled. So, but either way, it's live. The campaign runs for 2.5 months. And so anybody that subscribes at any point is automatically dropped into that one within about 2 hours. So yeah, go ahead and subscribe on that one. Hopefully you've had a quick glance over some of those points. Redwood's rolling out again. There's more coming. The Zoom app is available it's generally available now. If you have the add-on for AI, the Eloqua AI add-on, then there's generative AI enhancements for subject line recommendations coming. It's a limited controlled availability. So if you've got it, I'd say get in quick and request that. That's the same QR code, by the way. So go ahead and scan that one if you missed it. Additional security, which is always a good thing. If you're in the webbook app for Eloqua trial, if you were, sorry, that now becomes generally available. So we can talk a little bit more about that one. Don't have much time here today. The one thing I did want to quickly point out is the email bounce processor enhancements. So if you managed to watch the video with Jody and the team from Oracle, what they've done is there's some refining on what actually it's flagged as a hard and soft bounce back. You may or may not have had the situation happen where occasionally a hard bounce back has come back into Eloqua. Largely, I mean, Eloqua is just receiving information from servers in this particular scenario. However, some of those hard bounces, those people were real. They were still that organization, and members of the team have been able to email that person from Gmail or Outlook, etc. So it's certainly not a hard bounce back. And so you have to reset it, and that's fine. Things keep going. So there looks to be some enhancements that are being made as a part of 24A, which should help combat some of those. I mean, we're talking tiny, we're talking less than 1%. Less than 0.5% probably, where that's been incorrect, but constantly process. It's a moving target, I suppose. So they're constantly working on that deliverability piece, which is awesome. Okay, and that's it. Thank you so much. As I said, I'm happy to stay here on the line if there are any other specific questions. There's one here from Nipon, but otherwise, I will stay on the line for you, Nipon, and answer that for you. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next month. Remember, first Thursday of the month, and we'll get some information to you and replay links. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great day. Okay, Nipa, let me answer that for you. Okay, so what's my opinion on the AI features Eloqua offers? Look, I think the evolution of this stuff is critical, and everybody's wanting it, which is fair enough. Send time optimization. Now that Apple has auto opens, well, the impact there of the impact there of auto opens on your campaigns has to be fairly, well, you have to try and have some level of insight as to that particular size of your audience. Now you can get a little bit of an indication if you go to your dashboards. You've got a couple of dashboards that help you, email by device. So email by device gives you not just the device, but it also gives you operating systems. Yeah. So my question to you would be, so you can see here for us at Marketing Cube was iOS is 7.4%. That has been flagged in our system. So what's the impact to us of send time optimization, and how reliable would it be in the world of auto opens? Well, it may only impact 7.4% of my entire database. Is kind of the answer to my question. So my point there is that you need to look at your own data and answer that question kind of for yourself. Now, we know that Oracle's done some smart things to kind of help you identify or let the system know what's an auto open versus a real open, etc. So for instance, if Eloqua identifies an auto open, but then later sees a click on that same campaign content, it then adjusts that person from an auto open to a genuine open. Okay. I'm sure there's a little bit more smarts to it than maybe how simply I've made that sound. But there are things like that that Oracle have done to really help us get better quality data from that whole process. There is a swag of information. There's a blog post that we did that I keep adding things to because it's kind of the same topic. Let me, you're now, I'm not going to be able to find it as I'm auto open. Apple's, yeah, here we go. So Apple's mail privacy protection. What does it mean for Oracle email marketers and now? So there's Q&A in here. There's documentation where Oracle talks about what they have done and so on and so forth. And this is kind of a timeline exercise. Chad White, who is the head of strategic research at Oracle, Chad has published a number of pieces on the Oracle blog. So blogs.oracle.com, you can find those. But just search for Chad. Chad and the team there have certainly given you a little bit more insight to help you understand what the real impact has been. And so that's why I've kind of collected some of this stuff as a timeline, because it's a little bit of a moving target in that process. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question. Hopefully that answers your question and gives you a little bit more insight. But have a look at our blog, have a look at the Oracle blog. There's a range of places where you can find that information. Yeah, that's just some other screenshots we popped in there for you. Alrighty. Okay, all right. I can't see any other questions, Sean. So I think we might wrap up and leave these good people to the rest of their day. But thanks again, guys, for being around. Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely rest of the day. See you next time.
See you next month. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.